WABC Wednesday.
I'm Joan, and I'm your first Golden Bachelorette.
Joan's getting a second chance.
This is about everybody like me, navigating, trying to find love at this age.
I wouldn't be here if I didn't have hope.
Because love never ages.
Golden age doesn't mean you're old. Old is a state of mind, like a lot of living to do.
The Golden Bachelorette. Series premiere Wednesday on ABC and stream on Hulu.
From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show. Now, it's time for Protecting Your Investments, sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. Here's Larry Kudlow.
Hello, folks. I'm Larry Kudlow. This is Protecting Your Investments, sponsored by Colonial Metals Group. And today we're talking about protecting your investments by keeping a sharp eye on money and politics, which is getting hotter and hotter anyway. Thanks to Colonial Metals Group. Anyway, we're going to talk soon with Liz Peek, Fox News contributor, syndicated columnist, Steve Moore, Committee to Unleash Prosperity Hotline, WABC radio host of More Money, plays right after the show on many of these very same stations. All right, kids, welcome back. So I got to start with the debate. The debate is still the hottest political item. It was Tuesday night. Just seems like yesterday. Liz Peek, I'm going to give you the first whack at it. By the way, Liz, you were fabulous on the TV show with the other ladies the other night. Your ratings were off the charts. Your ratings are always off the charts. Anyway, so here we are on Saturday, Liz Peek. How's it hanging? How's it impacting? What do you think?
Well, I think really people came away thinking, yeah, Kamala Harris was well-spoken, obviously very prepared, if not overly rehearsed and studied. All of her mannerisms and gestures and scoffing at Trump and the little sound bites were ready to go. And I think that was quite effective, particularly since I don't think Donald Trump argued his case very well. But, yesterday she did an interview with another ABC reporter in Philadelphia, and she had the exact same sound bites, exact same skirting of issues and questions that she used during the debate. And I think the more people see that she really, well, obviously in the debate, what failed to happen is that she put no meat on the bones. She has a few bones of policy that she has thrown out to a hungry crowd, but so far they have no meat on them. And I think even independents, as Lee Carter has pointed out, kind of came away saying, where's the beef? What does it all mean? And again, I thought this interview she did yesterday, I think the fellow's name is David Taft or something, was abysmal and actually even worse in that she repeated the whole nonsensical series of non-answers.
Yeah, that's really weird. You are right about that. Steve Moore, Kamala Harris won't tell us, so I'm going to ask you, are you better off than you were 4 years ago?
Well, by the way, I disagree with my friend Liz because, Liz, you don't understand. She has a plan. Don't you know that?
I know.
She told us she has a plan. Look, it was Donald Trump can do better than that. Let's just put it like that. I didn't love his performance, but the bottom line is that really, when you look at how it shifted people's sentiments, really there was not much of a change. She might have gained maybe 1 point or something like that from the debate. And I was reminded, Larry, that you may recall that when Donald Trump debated Hillary Clinton 8 years ago, remember you and I went to the Hofstra debate, which was the first debate. And Trump was absolutely horrible in that debate, just awful. And I remember we were walking out of the Hofstra arena saying, well, it looks like Donald Trump isn't going to be president. And then he came back in the second, third debate, and he just clobbered Hillary. So he can do better than this. He survived. But I want him to be more specific about, one, attacking how, look, this is a woman. Let's not forget, folks, that this is a woman who had a voting record in the Senate that was to the left of Bernie Sanders. And most people don't know that. So Trump should have reminded people of that. And, you and I were both frustrated, Larry, that the issue of taxes hardly ever even came up in the debate.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most important issues, the taxes and what's happened to our runaway national debt. I think they spent, less than 2 minutes discussing that. And what was your question again? I don't know.
I'm trying to figure out if anybody was better off than they were 4 years ago.
Well, that was I wish they would just replay that. And here's an example, by the way, of where the moderators really truly were outrageously biased. That after that first question, the moderator should have said, "Okay, great, but you never answered my question."
Right.
But Liz and Larry, they never did that.
That night at Hofstra, I remember it. So we walked out of there, and we were doing the old John Bachelor show, remember?
Right, I do.
But we only had one cell phone, and we were passing it back and forth. And I think it's because neither of us wanted to do the interview.
It was too bad.
Kudlow and Moore, we have done more mischief together. Let's talk about the plan, because Liz, this came up.
Do we have to? I'm just kidding.
But the thing, but this is important. We had Scott Hodge at the Tax Foundation was on the TV show. I don't remember if it was the night you all were on or not. But anyway, Scott Hodge. And the Tax Foundation has done a price out of her tax plan. Okay. And it is really something that over 10 years, as these things tend to be measured, they have real GDP falling 2%. That's about $500 billion, okay? The capital stock, in other words, investment, falling by 3%. Wages fall by 1%. And then here's the killer. Jobs fall by 786,000, okay? Yeah. Now, this is from her tax plan. She's raising taxes on businesses and high earners and God knows who else. And it's about a 10-page paper, but I'm just reading you the thing. Both of you should look at it, dial up the Tax Foundation website. This stuff has to get out. This is, they're right of center, but these are not crazy people. These are people with a good track record. And the point is, we know that she would spend a couple of $1 trillion at least, because she said that in North Carolina before the DNC convention. And the tax plan, which is dribbled out, and this includes her nonsense. She's going to give a deduction, $50,000 deduction to startup businesses that don't need it because the Trump tax plan already has 100% expensing. And she'd give $25,000 to buy a home, which would drive up home prices. No, these numbers are appalling. And, I don't know if Mr. Trump's going to get him out or not, but I'm just saying, you look at this is a disaster. Literally, it would have a recessionary impact on the economy.
Larry, how could it not? That's why her using the Goldman Sachs report, which argued that, Kamala Harris's plan is going to be better for the economy than Donald Trump. On the sheer face of it, it was such an idiotic conclusion. On the one hand, to your point, you have a candidate who wants to raise taxes. I think the total number, wasn't it $5 trillion, something like that?
Yes. And
if you look at getting rid of the Trump tax cuts, Americans need to remember those tax cuts affected almost everybody, almost everyone. People earning less than $100,000 got a 16% reduction in their taxes. The top 1% paid more. It was a very good tax cut for all America. And I think people need to kind of go back to that and remember how better off they were as a result of that. So, this idea that she is going to kind of re-engineer our tax structure and so forth to basically aiming at wealth redistribution in ways that absolutely every economist is going to agree is going to slow the economy, it's just preposterous. And it won't happen. I don't think any Senate is going to go along with this stuff. But again, the really missing element here is she can't explain it. She doesn't understand it. I really believe if she did, she would be much more able during these very rare interviews and forums to be able to talk about this stuff. She can't because it's just she's picking like ornaments off a Christmas tree and trying to put them together in a way that's going to help the working men and women of our country, and it's not. And I think they need to know that.
Steve, Liz's point about the top bracket, people forget the SALT deduction was cut back to $10,000 from unlimited. And rich people, quote unquote, I have nothing against rich people, but rich people in the blue states on both coasts were screaming like stuck pigs because they had to pay that. So every time Kamala talks about how the Trump tax cuts only benefited the rich, this is not true. I mean, it's just not true. And if you ask me, to finance future tax cuts, I would eliminate the SALT deduction altogether, Steve Moore. And by the by, there's all these, loopholes in so-called tax expenditures that help special interests. Why don't we broaden the base and flatten the rates? That would be good tax policy.
Exactly. And so one of the points that the Trump campaign should be making is that if you repeal the Trump tax cut, that means they reinstate the state and local tax deduction. And Trump should make the case that would be the biggest tax cut for millionaires and billionaires in the history of the United States.
Oh, that's a great point. I love that. I love that. I love that.
And it is.
By the way, Steve, Chuck Schumer came out a few weeks ago when Kamala was touring the country talking about a wealth tax, talking about taxing unrealized capital gains. I think Schumer was hearing from donors who were completely freaked out about that. So he kind of went out publicly and said, we're going to reinstate the SALT deduction.
Yeah.
And so I think
that's right.
I mean, they're not stupid. They get it, that is really injurious to their billionaire donors.
Well, don't say they're not stupid. Some of them are.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Some of them are very stupid. And we've heard some very stupid things, but I don't want to name names. But the
other point, Larry, is that you touched on was that, this was actually a really, really good tax plan. And I'm writing a piece now for the Wall Street Journal about the sort of 6 unheralded gems in that bill. One of them is that by doubling the standard deduction, now it was one of the greatest simplifications of the tax code in history, because now only less than 1 out of 10 Americans itemize their deductions. You just check the box and you get so. And now what you have, and this is where I think we should go next on tax policy. So you only have about 9% of Americans who itemize their deduction. Guess who they are? The richest Americans.
Sure.
So let's get rid of those deductions and then lower the rate.
I agree.
And here's the thing, one other quick point. Remember, there was kind of a consensus in the 80s that we want a broad base and a low rate. And even people like Bill Bradley and Dick Gephardt and others agreed with that concept. What Kamala wants to do is raise the rates and then create all these special interest loopholes. It's the worst possible tax policy.
Right. She'd narrow the base and raise the rates. That's exactly right. But just saying, the economics of it are just terrible. I mean, this got recession written all over. All right, let's take a quick break. Liz Peek, Fox News contributor, Steve Moore, Unleash Prosperity Hotline, and WABC radio host More Money. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back.
Larry Kudlow. From Wall Street to the White House, this is the Larry Kudlow Show.
We are talking money and politics with Liz Peek, Fox News contributor, and with Steve Moore, committee to unleash prosperity and WABC radio host of More Money, following this show on many of these very same stations. Kids, I want to change subject a little bit. There's this view that ESG is receding from Wall Street and from investments and so forth. But I want to get your take on this. The Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, Gary Gensler, chairman. Gary Gensler, I might add, is a personal friend of mine, though I completely disagree with what he's cooking up. This is these climate tests, all right? I'm going to start with Steve on this. Climate tests and decarbonization tests. They basically want every company to act as a meteorologist and disclose every conceivable weather impact to the business over long time periods. Okay, it's really quite remarkable. And the goal here is to reduce American net greenhouse gas emissions, listen to this, by 50 to 52% by 2030. Which is just a few years ago, and they're using a 2005 baseline, and this is on the way to net zero. All right, this is every single. I mean, they have to make weather forecasts according to the SEC on this thing, and of course, nobody else in the world is doing it, including China and India. And you got to read this story in the New York Sun about this that's running today by a chap named Paul Tice. Anyway, Steve Moore, this is insane.
Well, it sure is. And you started by saying that ESG is in retreat, and it is in retreat, in large part because groups like ours have pointed out that this is a violation of fiduciary duty to the shareholders, that to get the highest return that they can and not play politics with people's pensions. And that's what's going on here. No other country is doing this. By the way, Trump was right in the debate when he said Germany has turned away from energy. He was absolutely right, and the fact checkers got it wrong. But look, we have two forms of energy that can clean up the environment, reduce greenhouse gases, are cheap and made in America, and that's nuclear power and natural gas. And Gary Gensler and his crowd are against those. So what's going on there? I mean, natural gas is now $2. It's cheaper than water. Why aren't we using our natural gas? It's the one reason we've reduced our carbon emissions more than any other country.
Any big country, that's for sure. And Liz, from this article, since 1990, when the UN first started warning the world about the dangers of man-made global warming, blah, 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 since 1990, annual global greenhouse gas emissions have increased by more than 50%. Mainly due to the continued use of fossil fuels, especially coal, by developing countries. By poor countries, they don't care about global warming. They care about survival.
No, I mean, mainly it's China and India. And for all that United States trots around to these global climate conferences, there's another one coming up in November, and pledges to basically thrash our companies and industries into compliance. The truth is China has done zero to further whatever we want them to do in the way of reducing carbon emissions. They're still building coal plants. They are completely absorbed and targeting the growth of their industrial sector. That is their big ambition. And we are basically lying down and accepting defeat. I mean, this has really gone on for some time, and it's so offensive. Larry, what's particularly offensive is that we are now coming into an era when electricity and power is going to be more important than anything else to the furthering of 21st century industries like AI, crypto, et cetera. Those are huge users of energy. And if we strangle our unbelievably productive, cheap energy sources in this elusive and quixotic ambition about reductions in carbon emissions, we are going to lose our competitive edge. It is beyond stupid. Honestly, this is one of the 2 or 3 issues that voters should think very hard about in deciding who to vote for in November.
And Steve, right, on that last point from Liz, November, Kamala Harris supports this stuff. Or at least there's no evidence that she disagrees with this stuff. And what she said at the debate is completely wrong, because the only increase in oil production under Biden-Harris was essentially a recovery from the pandemic. That's all. We are the same production levels, roughly 13 million barrels a day that we were in late 2019. We haven't moved the needle at all, because she may be for fracking, blah, blah, but they are opposed to fracking and leasing on all federal public lands. And you've got, environmental crazy regulations from the SEC and other agencies. This should be a gigantic issue.
Yeah, look, people should go to the study done by your friend of mine, Casey Mulligan. You guys work with Casey.
Yes.
He estimates that if we had just stuck with the drill, baby, drill policy that Trump had in place, we would have by now produced 2.5 billion more barrels of oil in the United States. That's close to $200 billion we've lost in American output because of this crazy green energy stuff. And you and Liz are exactly right.
By the way,
country that matters is China, and they don't care about climate change.
You know, they have done, they've at every turn, Biden Harris have stopped leasing on public lands. Very important. Right. At every turn, okay? And yes, the misnamed Inflation Reduction Act did have a leasing provision, but it was the lowest possible provision. All right, three leases a year. That's pure insanity. But the other point is, if you lease and produce, your royalties will go to states, localities, and the federal government to reduce budget deficits and maybe even pay for tax cuts. Think of that. Just toss it.
And by the way, it's not just that they haven't been leasing federal acreage. It's also that they upped the royalties and penalties on. Yes,
they did. Didn't they?
Penalties on methane, increased the royalties on production. Right. They've also been slow walking drilling permits. They've done everything possible to basically slow oil production.
Thanks, kids. Liz Peek, fabulous.
Thank
Steve
you.
Moore, fabulous. Take care, folks. I'm Kudlow. We'll be back next weekend.
Janine Pirro here for Colonial Metals Group. Colonial Metals Group helps Americans protect their future with the most trusted store of wealth in human history, physical gold and silver. If you're retiring or retired, go to colonialmetalsgroup.com/Pirro for your free Janine Pirro Colonial Metals Group Retirement Protection Kit, or call 800-965-8004. 800-965-8004 now to receive a free home safe and up to $7,500 in free silver.